Hi, it's Nikki and welcome back to Live a Little, your cozy corner of the internet where we discuss all of the in-between bits of life. The messy, honest and unfiltered parts, but we do it all judgment-free around here. It's the place that you can come to when you don't feel like you have that person to talk to about them. So, for today, I wanted to do an episode where the title might sound a bit confusing or a bit harsh, but hear me out. I have learned in the past year that I am a kind person now, not a nice person. And I know some people will hear that and think, but surely you can be both. You can be nice and you can be kind. And that's kind of contradictory because nice is a form of kind. And maybe in an ideal world you can. But I've learned that there is a real difference. To me, being kind for a lot of us means being a people pleaser, being agreeable, keeping the peace any means necessary, and avoiding conflict and therefore not having very good boundaries or a sense of self-worth. And therefore, it leads to you allowing disrespect because you don't want to be difficult or you don't want to upset anyone, and you basically put everyone's feelings and everyone's needs above your own for any means necessary because you don't want to be the reason that the vibe changes or someone's suddenly upset, whether they have caused it or they haven't, or you've caused it or you haven't. And then whether you're doing it consciously or not, being nice can mean that you get walked all over. And as I've got older, I've learned that I don't want to be part of that anymore. I have spent so much of my life shrinking myself for environments that were never meant for me or that I didn't deserve and that weren't welcoming, and therefore the same in like friendships especially. Because I felt like if I shrink myself enough and I dull myself down enough and I mute myself enough to just be kind of there and whatever the person or the people that then need me to be, then maybe, just maybe, they'll like me enough to keep me around. They'll like me enough to see me as valuable in their life. I was kind of at the disposal, my feelings and my needs were sort of at the disposal to everyone else, and I basically would do anything I possibly could to just be accepted and be liked by everyone. And that meant being nice and always saying yes and always doing what felt like the right thing, even though it wasn't a lot of the time, because I wasn't doing right by the most important person in my life, which is myself. So being nice, it isn't inherently bad. I'm not trying to say that. I just don't want it anymore in my life or to be labeled with it when it comes to the cost of myself, essentially. Because being kind to me is rooted in integrity. It's rooted in doing what's right and being fair by yourself and by others, especially when it's not easy and especially when it's an uncomfortable conversation, because sometimes that's the kind thing to do. If there's wrongdoing right in front of me and I've witnessed it, if I know it's wrong, I'm not going to excuse it anymore, whether that's other people or myself. I'm not smoothing it over. I'm not keeping the peace on behalf of someone who didn't care enough to keep the peace towards me and therefore caused harm. A nice person keeps the peace even at their own expense, and a kind person tells the truth, holds boundaries and protects what's real, even when it is uncomfortable. And yes, that can feel awkward, it can feel tense, it can make you feel like you're causing a problem or you are a problem, but I'd rather be uncomfortable for 5 minutes than be abandoning myself for 5 years. And I feel like I spent the majority of my teenagehood, so weird saying teenagehood, like I know it's not that far removed, but I'm not a teenager anymore. There's no teen in my birthday, or not my birthday, no teen in my age. But yeah, I spent so much of like my early teens putting myself into positions or finding myself in positions with people, especially, you know, like friends at my school that were not great and that were really uncomfortable for me to be in. But I felt like I had to just do anything, any means necessary to hold on to what I had there, even if it was literally just like a shred of a friendship or a relationship with someone. It was like, well, that's probably all I can get. I was so scared of confrontation. I still am. Like, the last thing I want is to confront someone. You literally could not pay me enough money to confront someone. I find it so uncomfortable. I find it honestly quite unbearable, even if I know they've done something wrong. I'm a little bit better with that now. Like, if I know there is literally a wrong and a right and I'm not in the wrong, then I find it easier to have that conversation because I know that there's like real justification. But if it's a bit of a grey area, or someone has made me feel a certain way and they are actually in the wrong, when I was younger, I would struggle so much with that, and I would apologize so much. I would never say my side. I would never express how I felt. If I did anything, if I even breathed the wrong way, it was like a sorry, like, oh, sorry. And then almost me like begging at like the feet, like figuratively, of these people that didn't even kind of deserve me in the first place, just so that they kept me around. Looking back, that makes me really sad for my younger self. You know, obviously everything is hindsight, but I wish I could offer her like compassion and like speak to her now and sit her down. I think we all want to do that. Like, there's things that our younger selves go through where, like, when we're older, and of course that can still happen. You can still be on the journey of going from a nice person to a kind person, or I'm definitely still on my people pleaser journey, because people pleasing also is an element of control for me. It feels like I am managing unnecessary outside things that could happen. Like, confrontation feels like something that's out of my control and feels like a threat, and that is something that I don't want. So keeping the peace feels like the best way that I can survive a situation and manage it, basically. But that then means walking on eggshells around everyone when I don't deserve that, and therefore never being myself and never expressing anything, good, bad, ugly, just not even being a whole human, because I didn't feel like comfortable to, or able to, or safe to, basically. So nice became a survival mechanism, as I think it does for a lot of people, to grin and bear it, to just kind of say yes even if you mean no. It could even literally be something as simple as like you liking a certain musician more than another musician. But if those people that you want to maintain that relationship with, who are fickle, have said, no, I like this musician more, I would then be like, oh yeah, I like that musician more, because I was so scared of expressing any opinion but the one that I was hearing, because I was worried of being dropped. And I was dropped anyway. It didn't even matter that I was nice all of that time, or I was agreeable, or I was friendly, and I like did everything I possibly could to try and nurture these relationships. Ultimately, on the baseline and the foundation, there was nothing to nurture in the first place. And now, having genuine friendships, it's honestly so crazy to look back at what I was trying to. It was like beating a dead horse. I'm trying to nurture something that isn't even there in the first place. It's like there being like a dead plant, and you're like trying to water it, and it's like, no, you can't bring this back to life. It's gone. And so I think I spent a lot of my younger years essentially doing that, trying to water plants or fuel relationships that like weren't there to serve me in the first place, especially in the right way. I think nice is often about being perceived well, because it is predictable, and it is just very no worries, even if there is a worry and there is a concern, because it's keeping things pleasant. And kindness to me is different, because it's almost like a backbone of like a good human, a well-rounded human. It's how you treat people, especially when it's inconvenient, and what you choose when no one is clapping, and what you do when being honest changes the atmosphere. It's almost like, to me, being nice is, say someone had food in their teeth, being nice is like not saying anything to them, because you don't want to. Being nice feels like you don't want to make them feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. But actually being kind is saying it to them in a polite way, like, oh, you just got a bit of, something in your teeth, and then being able to get on with it because you were considerate in a way that was real and that was honest. So to me, that's a very like surface level way that I would explain the two, but obviously it's a lot deeper than that, because niceness, I think, can feel like a performance if you're not trying to perform, and kindness is integrity. And I think a lot of us, especially women, have also been taught to confuse the two as well. It's that people pleaser blueprint, and I was absolutely obsessed, if anything, almost paralyzed by the thought of not being liked by anyone, even if they were like a horrible person. I was like, I need to be liked by you, because the idea of not being accepted is incomprehensible. And I think it's also because it goes back to me not accepting myself, and me not being able to self-validate and love myself and choose myself, that it felt like all of my value came from my relationships with other people, and the effort or lack of effort they put in, and the attention or lack of attention they put in, which therefore meant that there was so much yo-yoing, because I'd be in a friendship where I felt like, wow, this is steady, this person might be on best friend territory, and then suddenly they'd pull away for 3 months, or I'd then be unwell and they wouldn't make any effort to see me or to check in with me. And then it was like just stagnancy. And then I'd, lose this friendship or drift from this person. And that's not just my experience. I think it's being human, is that relationships are there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. When I had lots of seasonal friendships growing up, or relationships, which just happens being younger. It's more quantity over quality. And then as you get older, you realize that we're all busy. We don't have time. So the friendships you actually nurture deserve nurturing, and you are nurturing them for a reason. You're putting energy in that you may not have because this deserves that, and the person deserves that, or the group deserves that. But back then I was putting energy into shit and people and groups all the time. If I was even ever in the group or in the friendship, that just didn't even deserve it in the first place, basically. And it's exhausting. I would dull myself. It's like managing moods. It's softening opinions. It's apologizing for quite literally anything. And a lot of my niceness wasn't kindness, really. I realized that it was people pleasing, and it was choosing the agreeable, easy thing than the right thing, especially for myself. And, for a long time, I think it stems from my belief that if I was too honest or I was too direct, if I took up space, if I actually was myself for once, I would be left behind and people would stop choosing me or caring. So I learned how to be easy as a coping mechanism and as a means of survival, because it felt like the only choice and option that I had. It was like the best I've got, basically. So I learned how to nod. I learned how to say everything is fine when it wasn't. And what people don't realize about people pleasing, unless you've been a people pleaser, it's not this cute, considerate personality trait. Of course, you have to please others, but if you're not pleased yourself, then it's quite debilitating, honestly, being a people pleaser, because you're trying to keep everyone else safe except your feelings and yourself. And it then therefore trains people, especially people that don't deserve you or that are toxic, that you are okay with anything and you are up for anything. And then you wake up one day and you realize you've built relationships where you're loved because of how convenient and selfless you are, not for who you are. And I think that's what I realized when I was younger, is a lot of my friendships were, or I wouldn't even call them friendships, honestly, but relationships with people when I was younger. I was just there for either convenience or because they wanted something out of me, because at the time I had my YouTube channel and quite a lot of my friends kind of were like, oh, she's Nikki Lilly, I want to spend time with her, I want to film YouTube videos with her, I want to get into her life and her circle. And I'm not saying that everyone was like that, but I definitely had some examples of that in my life. It was really difficult. I think the deeper truth for me under it all as well is that I have felt like a burden for most of my life. And I have talked about this in quite a few episodes now, especially when I got my eating disorder, and not really telling anyone for a long time that I had problems because I didn't want to add another issue towards my parents or my family, because it felt like, and another thing, here we go, another issue that you've created, even though I never created it in the first place. I never wanted to be a problem or an issue to anyone. I didn't want to complicate things. I didn't want to be the person that people had to handle, because I already felt like I did that enough, especially in my family. So then what a lot of us do, I became the problem and issue to myself instead, because I couldn't really direct it anywhere else. And the last thing I was going to do is push all of my problems and issues that I felt towards myself and perception of myself onto other people. Even if someone was clearly wrong or they'd hurt me, I'd still find a way to make it my fault, because I was so scared to lose people. That's when friendship becomes conditional. Growing up, I put up with a lot of shit with friends and people that I shouldn't have. An example of this is just mistreatment or not being considered. I was in a 3 friendship, so it was 2 girls and me. This was in like year 7 and 8, and they were very, very good friends, very tight. And we were all in the same form together at high school. They would always hang out and not invite me. And then one day I initiated like, oh, should we go to the cinema or something? And then go back to someone's house. So we went to the cinema, we watched a film, that was fine. Again, still very much a 2-person conversation, and then me being the third wheel. That was okay, it was tolerable enough. And then we went back to one of the girls' houses. They'd basically created a YouTube channel at the time, and they said that they wanted to film a video on their iPad, and they asked me to hold the iPad the whole time the 2 of them filmed the video. And that is an example of where inconsideration and putting up with things you don't deserve means that you're nice and you get walked all over. And look, I never have an issue with like, by all means, let's film the video. I will help you with your channel. I will, do whatever. It's not an issue of like, why am I not in the video? It's the deeper issue of like, this has been done for a reason. It's a pattern of you not including me and thinking that I'm only good for holding the camera. That iPad could have easily been set down on the table, but no, you asked me to press record and basically be your recorder of the video while I'm at your house. Is that what we're going to do while we're hanging out? Is I'm just going to sit here while you two have fun in front of the camera and just record you? No. I remember my dad messaging me saying, oh, what time do you want me to pick you up? And I initially was like, oh, in a couple of hours when I got to the girl's house. And then I messaged him and said, can you pick me up now? And I just wanted to leave. And I've had so many examples of that, or people saying, oh, I'll meet you here at lunchtime. And then I've waited there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and they've never shown up. They've not even considered me or like thought of me enough to remember that you've literally arranged to meet me. And that's happened multiple times. And then I'm too scared to try and find somewhere to sit by myself in the lunch hall because I'm also too scared to be seen alone, which tracks back to our episode about spending time alone and being seen alone and how that's a deep-rooted fear for me. And so I would just go sit in the toilets at lunch. And no one should have to do that. Or I'd go sit in the learning support room at lunch and eat my lunch by myself in a tiny room. And I'd just count down the minutes till lunch was over. Or my mum would pick me up from school and I'd be crying my eyes out because I felt like I had no friends or no genuine friends. It was really, really hard. It's almost like watching a party and everyone kind of seeming like they're having a fun time, they're dancing, and you're kind of like on the periphery of this party where like the door's slightly open, but you just can't get through it because no one's there to, on the other side, open that door for you and help you and consider you. And I think that's the whole point, is their nice is built because it's felt like the only option you have, essentially. And I don't say that with judgment that my younger self shouldn't have put up with this shit. I put up with it because I knew no different. I never really had healthy friendships before that were a constant in my life. And so I say that with compassion because I genuinely thought like that was the best I had. And because I didn't really know what a healthy friendship looked like, I didn't know what was normal or unfair or unacceptable. It's kind of like a toxic romantic relationship where you maybe know deep down you deserve better and you maybe know that this isn't right, but you're so scared of being left with no one else that you keep the connection alive by any means, even if it's literally hanging on by a thread. So you stay nice, you smile through, you minimize it, you tell yourself you're being mature or you're overthinking how you feel. Therefore, friendship did feel conditional to me, and the condition felt like I could stay, I could be included, I could be kept, just, kept as long as I didn't cause problems or raise an issue or an opinion, as long as I didn't have needs that took up too much space or more than the other people's. So basically, for as long as I can remember throughout my teens, I was a bit of a doormat. And that put me in situations that now I would never let myself get into. And if I saw someone in those, my protective instinct would kick in. And it's not to say that I now have no people-pleasing tendencies. I 100% do. They're inbuilt into me. I'm less rose-tinted glasses now, where if I'm being taken advantage of, I can see it. Whereas before I was like, no. I'd make excuses for them all the time. And I think that's what the problem is, basically, is when you're not able to see outside of what you're dealing with because you've never had any different to compare it to. I think what the change has been is because I have more stability in my life, more assurance from other people, more assurance in myself and sense of self-worth, and basically a clear idea of right and wrong and what I'm entitled to in a relationship and what I deserve, which is basically just basic respect, basic care, basic consideration, like the basic foundational things of a genuine relationship. And I think that's the thing. When your self-worth grows, your tolerance drops for rubbish, essentially, from other people. And not because you become harsh or you become icy or difficult, but because you stop confusing keeping people with being loved, essentially. You stop confusing people keeping you around just for the sake of it and just because it's easy and you're not a problem to cut off, but they don't really care to maintain it. You stop thinking that is love and that is care and that is them being friendly and caring about you. And my mum has that superpower that I feel like all mums have, where she could read my friendships before I could. I'd have like a couple of different girls or friends coming around after school and she'd pick us up from school. She'd drive us home. They'd stay for dinner for a couple of hours and she could tell instantly when someone's energy was off. She could tell when I was either being mistreated or used, or just when that gut feeling that something didn't feel right. And I would be excuse after excuse. I'd be like, no, you don't know them. No, they're just shy. No this, no that. I'd defend people who just didn't deserve defending. And I'd rationalize their behavior that would be unacceptable, because I'd rationalize behavior that if it happened to someone I loved would be unacceptable, or me now, because I wasn't looking at friendship clearly. I was looking at it through fear. And it was, fear of conflict, fear of losing people, fear of being left with no one. And then inevitably, the thing my mum could see from the beginning would happen. She'd be proven right. They'd, without better words, like fuck me over or drop me, and she'd be proven correct. And that's such a painful but important example of how being nice can cloud your judgment. Because when you're terrified of losing something you feel like you've never had, belonging, a group, closeness, you'll tolerate things that are wrong for you. You will, and you'll just put up with them because you feel like that's all you've got. And you'll keep the peace even if the peace is costing you yourself and your identity and your sense of self-worth. And I think I've spent a lot of my life also masking. I think it's almost been a bit of, again, a survival where it's felt less draining sometimes in the moment, because if I became the version of myself that caused less friction, that asked less questions, that was the least uncomfortable for other people, I could get through things with less stress because I'm not really presenting myself anyway. So if I mask and they reject me or they drop me, I will feel less personally affected by it because I never really showed my full cards on the table in the first place. But I think that was built out of self-preservation and through the things I've been through when I actually did put my cards on the table and they just glanced at them and then shoved them away, basically. I think that's because so much of my life has felt out of my control. And so saying the right thing and being nice, keeping the peace, even when it was to the detriment of myself, gave me the illusion of control. Okay, if I can't control everything in my life, but I can control this interaction maybe, I can control whether this becomes confrontation or just an easy surface level thing to maneuver, I can control whether someone gets annoyed with me. I can control whether I'm disliked. So you do damage control before there's even damage that's been done. But the cost is huge because then you end up walking on eggshells with everyone that you shouldn't be. And that is not peace. That is anxiety dressed up as politeness. Niceness is almost emotional suppression. I don't think people talk enough about the fact that being nice all the time is so incredibly draining because it leaves you no room for the full range of emotions that we need as human beings. Sadness, anger, betrayal, disappointment, frustration, all of those things. If you want to scream because you want to scream and let it out, it's like doing that with a pillow over your face. It's like you feel like you have so much to say, but you just can't. You can't, because if you do, then everything's going to go to shit, basically. All of the relationships that you've tried so hard to hold on to, even though there's nothing there in the first place. So when you're committed to being nice, those emotions start to feel bad, feeling a bit angry, feeling a bit upset. The moment that they creep in, you instantly feel guilty for feeling things that are so valid and doesn't make you a bad person at all. You convince yourself that being angry makes you a bad person and that expressing hurt makes you difficult or it's uncalled for. And so setting boundaries feels selfish or feels embarrassing or feels dramatic. So you suppress it, you swallow it, you smile through it. And you tell yourself you're protecting your peace, but really you're just delaying the inevitable while sacrificing your own peace in the process. And over time, I think it can take your identity. I mean, it definitely took mine for a while, because if you're always trying to be yes, agreeable, okay, yeah, whatever you want to do, yeah, that's fine. You start painting the same with the same brush as the people around you, even if you don't actually like the art that's being created. That's a little metaphor for you. And so you adapt your opinions, you adapt your interests, you laugh at the same jokes, even if you don't find them funny. You say you love the same things, not because you truly do, but because it feels safer. Because it leaves you no room for disagreement. And it sounds silly, but it could literally be something as small as having a different opinion of musician, like I've said. But you feel like if you disagree or you present an even just slightly different opinion, that's not an open conversation. That is disagreement, and that is cause for an argument and cause for you to be left behind. And that's when you realize you're not being nice anymore, especially to yourself. You're just letting yourself disappear. And I think being cool and easygoing and low maintenance and unbothered, especially in today's society, and like never asking too much, never being too emotional. It's kind of everything that people are striving for, being nonchalant essentially, not caring. And caring is important. Caring what other people think is important. Considering other people, being a genuinely good person is important. There is not one nonchalant bone in my body. I care. I care so deeply that it will keep me up at night. I care so deeply that I won't be able to eat for days. And is that healthy? Is that okay? No. But I care. I'm not easygoing. I'm very tightly strung, and it's all a product of the things I've been through and just the fact that I truly care about other people and their feelings. And I think that's what it all comes from, is me being a sensitive person and just wanting everyone to be happy. But it should never be to the sacrifice of your own happiness, especially when those people don't deserve it. There's a time for both. There's a place for both where people do deserve it and people don't. And being nice is often because it's towards people that don't deserve it. Kindness doesn't always have to look soft. Sometimes kindness looks like telling the truth early, or delivering something that's hard, holding a boundary even when something means that it will lead to disappointment for someone, saying no without a TED Talk explanation, which I used to do all the time. If I didn't want to go to something or I couldn't go to something, I would feel like I need to send a paragraph essay to explain myself, so there was no room to be misconstrued or misunderstood or seen as being rude or like I didn't care. It was because I cared so much that then I was giving like a literal point evidence explain essay over text about trying to justify every single thing that I said or did. You don't need to be easy to read as a human. You have no need to explain yourself to other people when there is no need to. And I would do that all the time. I'd overcompensate all the time. And I think you can leave a situation that keeps shrinking you. I think that's what kindness is. And that doesn't always look nice. And sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like a no. Sometimes it looks like leaving. But it can still be kind because it's honest and it's protective. One thing that really stuck with me is that kindness isn't a label you earn, it's a practice. It's something you choose again and again, in tiny moments, in boring moments, in moments when no one sees it. And it takes real work, especially having kindness towards yourself and being kind to yourself. Mentally, physically, it all is probably one of the hardest things that you can build within yourself and believe. It takes self-awareness, it takes intention, it means choosing accountability, choosing honesty when it could be easier to just be liked and be nice and be easy. I like that framing because then it stops kindness being an ego badge and being the performity that nice can be and the conformity that nice can be. It becomes something that you try to live by and that you practice rather than it being something that you just are and a label, because everyone can slap a label on anything, left, right and centre. It is a doing, not a saying, I think. I want to caveat this clearly that saying I'm not nice is not permission to be cruel. It's not permission to be rude, dismissive or careless. Being not nice is not an excuse. I still believe in softness and I still believe in empathy. I'm an empath. I hate calling myself an empath, but I really am an empath to my core. It's all I know. I just don't believe in being nice. But I think now I just don't believe in being nice at the expense of my boundaries or my self-respect. So I'd say that's the biggest difference between me then, which was the version of me who tolerated so much and prided herself on being nice and that being my only personality trait and the only thing that I was good for, to then now where I give myself grace. I give myself compassion and I give myself space to actually feel. I think I have a wider lens now when it comes to people and relationships. I'm less reactive, but I'm also less willing to ignore what's right in front of me. And I'm more okay with losing people that aren't right for me or who have mistreated me because I'm finally willing to protect my peace and realizing that that is the most important thing. And I know that I'll never regret that or be worse off for that. If it means losing some people, if it means losing some relationships, it's incredibly difficult. Of course it is. But in the long term, you'll look back and know that that was okay and that was the right decision. I would rather that than hold on to things that never served me in the first place, which I did so much of my life. Relationships that just ate more and more into my soul and mental well-being and stability and identity. Because often people doing the damage have no idea what effect the damage is having on you. Don't give it two thoughts. They don't feel the way you're constantly overthinking what you said, how you reply, whether you sound off. They don't feel the spiral that you feel when they don't reply and you filling the silence with something you're doing wrong. And I can't live with that anymore. It's exhausting. I grew up genuinely paralyzed that I'd upset someone and it could lead to an argument. It would keep me up at night and I would apologize for so much. But now I'm comfortable walking away from things that aren't working. And I think that's just growing up and learning and perspective. And sometimes it can be simple. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a war. It can just be walking away from something or distancing yourself. Whereas before, I would clutch tighter and tighter and give more and more of myself to friendships that, quite frankly, did not care if I was there. And that's the biggest shift, I think, in myself and in where I am now, is that I'm not trying to be nice anymore. I'm trying to be kind. And that includes myself more often than not, really. So I want to leave you with something that I found recently that I have kind of been applying a lot to my life, that you may know it, you may not. It's not my original sentiment, but it really, really helped me put into perspective relationships in life, especially when I was struggling to kind of get over relationships that maybe haven't gone the way that I originally thought that they would in my life. So there's a theory I live by now, and I think it comes from having more assuredness in myself, more appreciation for myself, and more love for my own inner world. Because when your foundation is solid in your life, it becomes less shattered by the external people that come in and out of it. So I want to leave you with the train station theory. Life is a train station. People get on, people get off. Some ride with you for a stop, others for a few stations, and a rare few for the whole journey. Don't grip too tight. Don't beg them to stay. Their stop might not be yours, and that's okay. Let them go with grace, because every goodbye makes room on the bench for someone who's meant to ride further. And I want to add that if you catch yourself slipping back into being a nice person to appease, which I still do, that's okay. It's hard to learn something that has felt like survival for so long. That's me. That's not the train theory. That's me adding something. Be gentle with yourself in the unlearning, and also pay attention to what direction you're going in, like a train. Because if you realize you're on the wrong train, in the wrong friendship, the wrong dynamic, the wrong version of yourself, you can get off at the next stop. There's always time. You're not trapped. But the longer you stay on the wrong train, the harder it is to get back. Not because you can't, but because you start abandoning yourself in smaller and smaller ways until it feels normal. So get off earlier if you can. I have comfort now in knowing that I was kind in most situations in my life. I did what I could, and I showed up with integrity and with a kind heart. I tried, and I can sleep at night knowing that to be true of all things. I can sleep at night knowing that I gave myself compassion and I gave the situation compassion. And in a really uncringy way, being kind is honestly one of the hardest and bravest things you can do. The world makes us put walls up. Relationships make us put walls up. And for some of the things I've been through, it would be so incredibly easy, so easy for me to be a bitch to everyone and not be kind. It takes a lot less energy actually to just be like, I'm not going to put in any effort with any relationships. It's only me in this life. It's me and nothing. And it's actually very hard to be kind and to open yourself up to be real and be honest. And it's uncomfortable and it's not linear and it's not easy. And it doesn't mean that you being a kind person means that you can't have boundaries and you can't get a bit angry sometimes. It allows space for all of them feelings on the bench, essentially. And so when you actually believe that and your sense of self is your foundation and that's the thing that can't be faltered or changed, then you stop being so altered by the incomings and goings of the people around you. It doesn't mean that it never hurts. I've lost friendships and relationships that have truly felt like mourning a person, like grief. And I'm still not fully over them, but it just means it doesn't have to fully destroy you anymore. I'd rather know I was a kind person, even if it was uncomfortable for a train stop or 2 or 5, than live on this never-ending journey of serving and smiling at everyone but myself. Because being nice is something that you can regret, and I've regretted it, but being kind, I don't think that's something that you ever can or I ever can. So I kind of wanted to leave you with that. I think my little thought of the week would be, how can you in your life show up for more kindness for yourself? And where are parts of your life where nice has become the overarching feeling or factor? how can you make that movement towards kindness? It's just a bit of a question to ask yourself. And do you feel like you're more in a place where you're nice and you're trying to get to kind? Or do you feel like you're fully realized and established in like being a kind person? Or is it hard? Are you still stuck in the in between? I know I definitely am. It's a journey. I'm not saying I'm a kind person and like I'm Mother Teresa, or I'm an amazing person. You know, I am perfect. It's not that. But I think kindness to me is being a decent human and valuing yourself as much as you do other relationships, and knowing what a good one is versus a not good one. I think that's what kindness is to me, is it starts with yourself. So I'm going to leave you with that. I love the train station theory. Sometimes we just need little theories and things to help us make sense of the things happening in the world when it feels so hard to make sense of, especially in today's world. It's so hard at times. And so I think little theories like that to put in your pocket and make sense of things can just help you, even for the moment you're in that spiral. I know it does for me. But I'm going to stop talking now. I love you guys. Thanks for sitting with me for this one. If you've related to it, I hope it's left you feeling a little bit less alone. I wish I had a podcast episode like this to listen to when I was growing up. I know that I would have felt so much less alone and more seen and heard, which is the whole point of why I do these episodes. I'll see you very soon. And as always, remember to be kind to yourself and live a little. Bye.